Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you here to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So we're here on Wednesday night for our Wednesday night favorites, a show we put on every Wednesday night in which I pick some list of some sort. Usually it's a top 5 or a top 10, or maybe it's a top 25. Sometimes I do a ranking. Sometimes I make a list of some sort. Anyways, tonight we're going to be doing a top 5, and this one will be my 5 albums which I think the deep cuts are better than the hits or the radio friendly songs, if you prefer. So the first one, we're going to do this alphabetically, so it's not really in any particular order other than I just put them alphabetically. So I've picked 5 albums out of my collection who I think qualify to be on this particular topic. The first one is going to be Blue Oyster Cult's Fire of Unknown Origin, and I do apologize for things being backwards. I have not figured out how to switch them to forward view for the view to be facing me. I haven't been using this computer for a while, so I forgot where that part was. So I will get to that eventually and fix it. Anyways, this album basically has one hit single, which is Burning for You. And then you have a couple of other songs that were fairly well known on the radio. One of them, Veteran of a Psychic Wars, was also in the heavy metal movie that came out during the time period. And then, of course, you also have the song Heavy Metal, the Black and Silver, which I know did get some airplay on some of the radio stations I used to listen to. And they're all good songs. I do like them all, but I think the better group of songs are the deep cuts, which include the title track, Fire of Unknown Origin. It's a fantastic tune, one of the best on the album. Burning for You, of course, is a good song. Soul Survivor is probably my favorite track on this album. I don't know, what's just something about that song has just kind of grown on me over the years. Vengeance of the Pack, this is another kind of a heavy song. Definitely one of my favorites on the album. And then Joan Crawford, which is a bit of a quirky song, but for some reason it always sticks in my claw. That's the big thing about Blue Oyster Cult. They have a lot of those quirky kind of songs on different albums that really kind of stick to you. And so overall, I think the deeper cuts on this album over the length of its time, because I had this album originally in vinyl, went with my vinyl collection to my sister, and then I did get this version on CD. I'm not even sure how long ago I got this one, but I've had it long enough that I've been listening to it again. It may only been since I started the channel. I can't really remember now, but I think if you were to ask me to make a top 5 or top 5 songs on the album, I think the deep cuts would probably win out over the less than deep cuts. So so this album, I think the deeper cuts are better than the top songs on the album. The next album up is, I chose this album, Iron Maiden's Seventh Son of the Seventh Son. So the big track on this album, of course, or the one that was radio friendly and got radio play, was Can I Play With Madness? And it's a good song, but some of the deep cuts, Only the Good Die Young, really good. The actual title track, Seventh Son of the Seventh Son, is epic in proportion and in sound. I think it's probably the best track on the album. The Evil That Men Do, that did get some airplay on the radio, I think, and it's a good song. But, Moonchild, I think, is probably better than that, and A Clairvoyant might be better than that as well. This whole album rocks, though. Deep cuts really add some depth to this album. And for me, I think that the deep cuts are just a little bit better than the radio-friendly stuff here, or the ones that got more airplay. So Iron Maiden's Seventh Son of the Seventh Son is the second album. The third album is going to be well known. This is a classic, considered one of the great albums of its time, Aqualung. So this album, of course, came out many, many years ago, back in 71, I believe. Their 4th studio album. Of course, Aqualung is the big track on this album, but you also have probably Cross-Eyed Mary got quite a bit of airplay, but Locomotive Breath, of course, is the other big track on there. So both their big tracks are pretty well known. I've never cared much for the song Aqualung. I do like Locomotive Breath. I think it's great, but the deep cuts on this album are better for sure, for me anyways, personally. I think Mother Goose, probably my favorite track on this album. So it's so good. Such a classic vocal song. I just love it. Cross-Eyed Mary, which did get some radio airplay, is also a great tune as well. My God, fantastic tune. Wind Up. This was for a long time my favorite track on the album. I still think it's fantastic. And then you've got some additional add-ons here to this album, which is really good too. But overall, even though Aqualung and Locomotive Breath are probably big, well-known songs, I think the other deep cuts are just that much better than them. Anyways, that's the number 3 album. Next up is this album, Creatures of the Night from Kiss. Never was one of my favorite albums by them, but I do like it. Of course, the I Love It Loud, that was the big kind of anthem song from the album that everybody loved. And to be honest with you, I'm going to tell you, I think it's the worst song on the album now. I loved it then, but Keep It Coming is a better song for sure. The title track is really good as well. Saint and Sinner's pretty good. And then for me, the 2 big songs on the album are Killer, which is the second last track, and War Machines, which I think is easily the best track on this album. And so the deep cuts, even though I Love It Loud was the kind of well-known track of it, I think those deep cuts are just better. And so then we got Creatures of the Night. That's our 4th album. And the last album on it, one of my favorite albums, at least by this band, talking about Fragile from Yes. We all know what the big track is on here, Roundabout, and for a long time in my life, it was my favorite song, period. But over the last couple of decades, three or 4 decades, or the last 3 decades, it has been probably my 3rd favorite track on this album, with South Side of the Sky being the better track, I think, and the bass and the dominance of Heart of the Sunrise, just a fantastic track. So for me, Roundabout and Long Distance Runaround are kind of the 2 more radio-friendly songs, whereas South Side of the Sky and Heart of the Sunrise, to me, are the deep cuts, and they get a lot of airplay too now. They didn't when I first got the album, but I think they're the better 2 tracks. And so for me, the deep cuts on this are better too. So there's 5 albums that I think arguably have better deep cuts than their radio-friendly stuff, or their singles, or whatever you want to call them. It's not, and it isn't that the singles are bad. I like all the singles on all these albums, but I just think when I'm listening to it now, those songs I don't listen to as much. I don't think they're that great. I just think these albums have such fantastic deep cuts that they overshadow their big hits. So I'm just going to reiterate them. I'll do it backwards this time. Yes is Fragile. Creatures of the Night from Kiss. Aqualung from Jethro Tull. Iron Maiden's Seventh Son of the Seventh Son. And last but not least, Blue Oyster Cult's Fire of Unknown Origin. All 5 of these albums, fantastic albums, well worth taking the time to explore and listen to. And I think you'll find that if it's the singles that bring you in, it's the deep cuts that will keep you. So anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Favorites. We will be back next week with another episode of Favorites. So have yourself a good evening. Take care and goodbye.